In this video presentation, we will analyse the three pedagogical approaches introduced within the module. These are TGFU, CLA and traditional coaching. Out of these, we have selected TGFU as the main point of focus for the presentation. However, we will also review and reflect upon the other two coaching styles, and we will underpin the rationale for the focused choice. Traditional coaching is a very linear coaching method in which a session will be delivered to a group of participants with instructions being very straightforward and basic. Coaching sessions which are traditional tend to be the same for all participants. This means that those who are at a higher ability level are often given the same task as those whose ability within the sport is lower. Having this imbalance of quality within a drill can lead to disruption as more advanced players may become frustrated. Also, creativity is lost from participants during traditional coaching sessions, believe Santos and Morgan, as with the linear approach, participants become almost robotic with their actions and can only perform under the instructions of their coach. This linear pattern, which traditional coaching uses, is why the approach is so popular with teachers, as they often have limited time with participants. With the approach being very straightforward, teachers can use it in order to cover several topics very easily without much input from pupils. In addition, coaches or teachers who have little experience within certain activities can use the method as it is the simplest to understand and easiest to adapt should change be required, say Greehane, Godbout and Boutier. As well as struggling to implement learning in game situations, individuals tend to be less motivated in drill-based sessions. A primary reason for this is highlighted by Cassidy, Jones and Potrack that a coach using traditional coaching methods direct instructions and feedback at the group rather than the individual, thus limiting individualised learning and student autonomy. From a learner's point of view, linear approaches are less appealing than the more mentally stimulating lessons. Moy, Renshaw and Davis, 2016, conducted a study in which 54 students with varying hurdling experience took part in two sessions, a linear and non-linear session. After participation in both approaches, learners completed a questionnaire to gauge their motivation levels when participating in each method. The categories were competence, relatedness, autonomy, enjoyment and effort. Mean scores from all who take part show clearly that the non-linear approach scores significantly lower in all areas than the linear section. This clearly identifies a lack of motivation on the learner's behalf, albeit on a relatively small sample size. This learning environment is effective in getting across basic skills to an extent is effective in skill acquisition. However, learners tend to favour non-linear learning zones, which indicates a disconnect between traditional coaching styles and enjoyment.
Led approach would be in a game of basketball where in order to develop the skill of a layup, 2 points would be awarded for when a layup is scored and only 1 point awarded when any other type of shot is scored. Constraints-led coaching was introduced to act as a guide for coaches who are seeking how to transfer skills learned in a traditional environment into a game scenario. People who are introduced to the idea of constraints-led coaching are often confused as to how it differs from TGFU. The key difference which sets the two pedagogies apart is that constraints-led is often used to develop skills which are specific to that sport, for example, a layup in basketball. Whereas although TGFU could also be used to develop a layup, it is likely that there are other areas also being developed such as decision-making or teamwork, and that was according to Arrojo and Davids in 2010. Clement, Rocha and Korgakar in 2012 identify three broad categories of constraints: organismic, environmental and task. Organismic constraints are inherent to the practitioner and can be emotional, physical and mental. Environmental constraints are discovered when visual and auditory information is processed, and the task constraints relate to the sport-specific rules and equipment being used. As stated by Key in 2019, In order to apply this method, a coach must have a sufficient depth of knowledge on a player's capability and behaviours before the implementation of constraints so that they can subsequently make an informed judgment over whether these constraints will prove useful for development. This is crucial because if a constraint that is introduced proves still too easy or equally too difficult, then there is no real benefit to the learner, as the outcome will either never be achieved or will be achieved without any realistic problem solving. McEwen and Christie in 2019 state that this approach encourages the design of a training environment that uses specific constraints that can take any shape and form in order to develop a certain skill and promote its acquisition. The use of constraints-led approaches is very beneficial to both the coaches and the athlete, as it allows the athlete to have more autonomy in the session, making room for those working at different stages, and overall it makes the sessions more game-based rather than instruction-based activities. Therefore, constraints-led approaches is important and should be seriously considered while planning or delivering sports to participants.
According to Hopper in his research in 2002 and Hortiguela and Garrido in 2017, teaching games for understanding is a method of coaching where the focus is on the general understanding of the sport as a whole, like shown on this figure, instead of the focus being on the development of separate and specific technical skills. The research also finds the impact that teaching games for understanding has on lifelong sporting participation, and they explain their findings by stating that this pedagogy approach positively impacts learners' motivation in sport, as well as introducing an increased perspective of achievement among many participants. This subsequently results in increased future participation and highlights a strong positive association between this pedagogical approach and increased sport participation among learners. According to Ford, Yates, and Williams in their study from 2010, teaching games for understanding approach utilizes the perceptual, cognitive, and motor skills needed in order to facilitate skills acquired during practice into a competitive situation. The combination of these skills results in an overall better tactical development of the players, because as we can see, tactical awareness leads to a player making the appropriate decision in a hard situation, basically knowing what to do and how to do it. Executing a skill in the correct situation can improve every person's performance. In a research from 2002 conducted by Kirk and McPhail, they find that teaching games for understanding allows participants to work on both technical and tactical development together, which proves a more beneficial experience for participants in that session. An example of the many benefits from this approach would be the increased motivation and enjoyment the players feel while teaching games for understanding is being used, which has also been connected to an increased level of skill retention, found Vollmer and Kirtner-Smith in 2016. The better understanding of rules and strategy and improved tactical awareness while a play situation is being used was found by Morales Belando and Arias Estero in their research from 2017. They compared the teaching games for understanding and the blocked linear approach to coaching.
Mandigo, Lodwick and Treadway 2019 highlighted a study that investigated the impact which an 8-week programme carried out after school for elementary school children that had adopted teaching games for understanding to look at the development of their physical literacy. They looked at the development of 12 physical literacy indicators. These were kicking, balance, thinking, running, core muscular endurance, cardiovascular, interact with others, participate in diverse environments, interest in diverse activities, participate in the diverse activities, feeling and thinking. For the majority of the participants, higher scores were recorded for 10 of the 12 indicators. This shows that the use of teaching games for understanding has the ability to have a significant improvements in a number of aspects in a young person's physical literacy and ability. The suggested practice while using this approach is to use game-centred situations in order to develop a learner's cognitive capacities, technical skills and decision making, which is challenging to do in a non-game situation. Calibre, Lopez, Greco and Perez Morales 2019. This is then supported by the work of Bunker and Thorpe 1982, which also highlights these specific areas in a learner's ability. A study conducted by Calibre, Lopez, Greco and Perez Morales 2019 set out to determine whether this was true by monitoring progress made by participants at children's basketball camp. Results from the study confirmed that there was no significant increase in skills such as shooting and passing and isolation from the method. However, for other aspects of the basketball, such as awareness and communications, participants from the camp showed significant increases in the way these skills were demonstrated, which also verifies the work by Griffin and Payton 2005, which suggests that using teaching games for understanding as a coaching method improves tactical elements in sport. Ozolova and Zapalatova 2015 conducted research which investigated the effect of 8 weeks of teaching games for understanding compared to 8 weeks of traditional practice. Each group consists of students born between 2001 and 2003 and a questionnaire asking about the rules and technical knowledge of basketball was given to all involved. A 6.47% difference was noted between the knowledge of the groups participating in teaching games for understanding and traditional coaching. Evidence supporting this claim is present with Popliaka 2012 finding almost identical results in volleyball. Learners thrive in an environment which they have more control over and can express a variety of skills. This impact of this is that learners are more likely to be engaged in the learning and apply themselves, as well as retaining skills and being able to apply them in different sporting environments.
Teaching games for understanding aims to inspire those involved and challenge traditional learning beliefs, such as the teacher should transmit knowledge to the student. In 2005, Butler stated that the role of the coach is to be the partner to the learner to accelerate their learning. This is further supported by the work of Harvey, Cushion and Mesa Gonzalez in 2010, who say the coach plays an important role in fostering environments for problem solving and decision making to take place. This usually benefits the learner as it provides them with mental skills that are transferable to other sports, not only the one that the session is based upon. This may not happen in traditional sessions as technical skills cannot always be crossed over. For example, learning to pass a football will not be very helpful when learning to hit a cricket ball with a bat. It should be said that those who may not be as technically competent may not benefit from teaching games as understanding as much as those with a sound physical platform will, as noted by Olasova and Zapatalova in 2015. But teaching games for understanding develops game skills which are vitally important to combine with physical skills to become strong game players, as Griffin and Butler found in their work in 2005. In 2017, Osman stated that a competent coach using this pedagogy should be able to provide the learner with opportunities to acquire skills relevant to their current ability level and future development, increase motivation by providing the optimal competitive environment for all students, as he said on page 171, and improve decision-making skills and self-confidence because of the autonomy the athletes are given with this pedagogy and its game-related approach. Crespo, Reed and Miley in 2004 stated that although enjoyment is an essential part of the sport, it is vital that the use of correct techniques and form is not lost because of making the practice enjoyable. However, Holt, Student and Bengoshia found that when people were taking part in a TGFU session, most participants were fully engaged and therefore learned more at the same time. As a group of coaches, we conducted our own research over 4 weeks by using traditional teaching games for understanding and constraints-led approaches on primary sixes at Doonfoot Primary School, where we delivered basketball sessions. We created 2 questionnaires, one for teachers and one for kids. At the end of each session, we asked that those questionnaires were completed. Of 54 kids, 47 said they had fun and 40 found the session interesting, showing that TGFU is clearly very enjoyable for this age group in particular. Teachers were asked more open-ended questions regarding the benefits and limitations of each pedagogy. For teaching games and understanding, both teachers noted that engagement was very clear and that teamwork is encouraged in a teaching games for understanding environment. One criticism is that the fast-paced environment may have intimidated some kids and had an impact on skill acquisition. However, teaching games for understanding feedback was largely positive and a very effective pedagogy.